Is IT ready? Usually on Zoom, I can see a thumbs up or something. Or they used to come in with the board, yeah. So I just need a go that we're okay, that we're going out. I got a thumbs up. The real thumbs up. So with that, let me call this meeting to order. Welcome. I'd like to call the October 21st, 2021 regular meeting of the Encinitas Planning Commission to order at 6 p.m. Please turn off your cell phones or set them to vibrate. Agendas and speaker slips are available at the back of the room. And we'll go to roll call next. Let the record reflect that 4 of the planning commissioners are present. Commissioner Sherrod is absent. Next item is Pledge of Allegiance. We begin the meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance. Please join me. Ready? Begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Next is oral communications. So we start each meeting with oral communications, where anyone wishing to speak on a topic not on tonight's agenda may request to do so by filling out one of the white speaker slips in the back of the room and handing it to the commission clerk over here. Dina, do we have any oral communications?
Yes, we do. We have one this evening, and that would be Geraldine Kessler.
Okay. You should get a green LED light when you hit it. Is there a button on the deck there?
Okay, can you hear me okay?
Yep. You want to get fairly close to the mic so you can pull it up. There you go.
Okay, here we go. I would like to speak about the money grab from developers across California and also of the environmental nightmare Staver project on Melba Road that is slated to take down a mature grove of Torrey pines plus 176 other trees, in addition to 30 smaller trees and native shrubs, and demo a beautiful historical home built in 1938, all based on AB 2345. As I mentioned last week, I found out that perhaps there is some historical value that is related to the botanical gardens with Anton van Amersfoort name on the deed, asking for an easement on the Staver property. Anton was the original owner of the property, known as the Botanical Gardens, before the Larrabees purchased it from him. He's also responsible for early irrigation methods used in the area, utilizing this to plant avocado trees in the area. He was the president of the Encinitas Water District for many years and survived a recall. My point is that the historical value of this property should be noted, and it should be preserved and restored, not made into a heat island and destroy all the neighboring communities. If someone had taken a hard look into this nightmare Goodson project, it could have spared Encinitas from the wasted time of the city employees and planning committee, not to mention the residents' time and money having to hire lawyers, etc. I don't think Mr. Goodson could read a room. The Staver project is headed down the same path. The way he continues to harass the seniors and longtime residents on the neighboring properties is appalling. And I'm sure his grandparents would be rolling over in their graves at these actions. They were historically stewards of the land since the settling in the 1940s. The overworked planners and engineers of the city are not paying attention to the details of the environmental nightmare projects, which caused neighbors to have to lawyer up and defend the land, when this sacred property with its historical value to Encinitas should be preserved and made continuous with Oakcrest Park. That also contains rare and endangered plants and species like the California gnatcatchers, Encinitas bacaris, Del Mar manzanitas. I'm asking the city to assist with acquiring the property from the Stavers Trust and preserve it as an open space for the area community. The setup could be similar to Solana San Diego Park or an annex of the Botanical Gardens, serving as an outdoor STEM classroom for area schools. Please support us in preserving Encinitas redwoods, the last piece of open space in old and new Encinitas. Thanks for listening.
Thank you. And let the record reflect that we have all 5 commissioners now.
Sure.
Let's see, next item is changes to the agenda. Are there any changes to the published agenda?
There are none.
Okay, great. We now move on to the main part of our agenda. The main part of our agenda is normally divided into the consent calendar, regular agenda, and commission reports. Next up is the consent calendar. These items are considered non-controversial or routine in nature. All consent calendar items are typically voted on collectively in a single motion without any staff presentation, public comment, or commission deliberation. However, if a member of the public or a commissioner has requested a consent calendar item be heard, the item will be removed from the consent calendar and be given an individual hearing. To pull an item from consent, a member of the public should submit a pink speaker slip for the specific item number, and the item will be given an individual hearing. Items removed, oh, I already said that. Tonight's consent calendar is made up of 4 items. Item 6A, is it poke? Or it is poke? Or I'm not sure if it's poke chop or I assume it's pokey? Pokey, thank you. Pokey Chop Alcohol Service, case number multi 004425-2021. And this is a public hearing to allow the sale of beer and wine for on-site consumption at an existing restaurant. The project is located at 429 Encinitas Boulevard in Old Encinitas. Item 6B, Fox Point Farms, case number multi 004657-2021. This is a public hearing to consider a tentative map modification and coastal development permit to allow all 250 residential units to be in the form of condominium ownership. The project is located at 1150 Quail Gardens Drive in Leucadia. Item 6C, the Portofino Hotel Entitlement Withdrawal, case number multi 004650-2021. This is a public hearing to withdraw entitlements, which a major use permit, design review permit, and coastal development permit approved as part of the Planning Commission Resolution PC 2019-19. The project is located at 186 North Coast Highway 101 in Old Encinitas. And the last item is item 6D, 777 Second Street Mixed Use Complex, case number multi 003802-2020. This is a public hearing to consider a density bonus, major use permit, design review permit, boundary adjustment, and coastal development permit to allow for the demolition of an existing residential duplex and commercial office building and construction of a mixed-use project consisting of 9 residential units, approximately 2,400 square feet of commercial, parking lot, landscaping, best management, and ADA improvements to allow more than 50% of the total project square footage for residential and a temporary construction trailer. Staff recommendation is recommending this item be continued to November 18th, 2021 Planning Commission meeting. The project is located at 777 and 779 and 793 Second Street in Old Encinitas. So has the public pulled any of the items?
No items have been pulled.
And does the commission wish to pull any items?
I actually have questions on both 6B, Fox Point Farms, and 6C, which is the Portofino revocation. I don't need a full staff report, but I would like the opportunity to ask some questions before we vote on them.
And I had one question on Fox Point, so I would have pulled it too. Anybody else? Okay, so it sounds like we will go through 6, B?
I think 6B would be should we close the consent calendar?
Yeah, but I just want to make sure I've got 6B and 6C, okay. So I'll entertain a motion to pass item 6A and 6D on consent.
I make a motion to approve the consent calendar accepting 6B and 6C.
Okay. And do I have a second?
I'll second. I don't have any concerns.
Okay. Who?
I'll second.
Okay, great. Any discussion? If not, we'll call the question.
Should we be voting here?
Yeah, we're waiting for the computer.
Oh, yes.
There we go.
Susan, did it pop up on your screen? No?
No.
No. She doesn't have the voting option.
Yeah.
I can go ahead and put it in.
She was marked.
Oh,
Okay.
there we go.
Oh, there you go. Okay, so it passes 5-0. Yeah, good. Okay, let's see, where are we? Items removed from consent calendar. So I think we'll start with item 6B as in boy, the Portofino. And I think, Kevin, you were saying you don't need a,
No, and B as in boy is Fox Point.
oh, Fox Point, jeez. Trying to juggle and do, but do you need, you don't
Yeah,
need a
no,
staff
I
report?
just wanted to get clarification from staff and possibly the property representative about the well, first off, there's a lot of errors on the amount of market rate versus very low affordable. In the request, it's listed as 208 and 42. Further on, it's 210 and 40, which I believe is the correct number. I think that's what's in our resolution. 53 are already condos and another 197. And my question specifically had to do with the very low-income units. And are they going to be for sale units or are they going to be rental units? Perhaps we could,
I can go ahead and answer that question if you need further clarification from the
if you
applicant.
could.
We can do that. But the applicant has indicated that they would be sold to an affordable housing company who would then rent the units, at very low. So it will remain at very low.
okay, yeah, because my concern is everyone's heard me speak, I don't really like for sale affordable units. I think they're a trap for people of low income, whereas rental units are the transition housing we need. And that was my only real concern.
Okay, I just realized we should have amended that first motion to include the memo, the correction memo.
Correct,
yes.
yes. A memo was sent to the planning commission that did correct that first error on the page 1 where it should be 210. Yes,
Thank
Yeah.
you very much.
Yes. So, but I was going back to item 6A. There was a correction memo that should have been part of that motion, so,
I'll reflect that in the minutes.
yeah, do everybody agree that the correction the memo is included in 6A?
I'll say yay.
Yes.
Okay, yeah, so it looks like we have a yes for everybody there. And so we have a similar memo with several corrections on 6B, so, so you have your question answered?
I have my question answered. I just wanted to make sure those units remain just rentals.
And my question is along the same lines, given what's been going on in the press with, out in Loden on Desert Rose, as it was called, what is the mechanism for distributing these? And I know there will be an affordable housing agreement. What can we do to guarantee, because before when they were rental, there was less of a concern. Now that they want to switch to become ownership, I have a little more concern of what the mechanism is for fairly distributing them.
yes. So one thing I do want to note is that under the state law, the developers are able to choose whether or not they want to do for sale or for rent. So this applicant is choosing to sell them and then continue to rent them. And then, I'm sorry, your second part of your
Yeah,
question?
and that's fine. I don't have a problem with that, but when they switch to the ownership, like where in the case that's been in the news about the Loden where it went to an LLC, these are actually ownership units. To us, they're ownership. I mean, obviously, the city will be part of the affordable housing agreement, a party to it, and they will administer and monitor the administration, I should say, of these for sale units that ultimately will be rented to lower income. But I think we want to make sure they they get distributed fairly, equitably, I guess is the best word. And I'm curious, where is that mechanism? How, how do we guarantee as we switch this entitlement from rental, which has a relatively short term, will roll over to an ownership that is much longer term? How do we guarantee fairness in that?
So they actually, in the affordable housing agreement that ends up being recorded on the property, our staff works with the details on how they will be administering the distribution of the affordable units. So the affordable housing agreement includes that path, and they would work, staff would monitor, our housing division staff monitors the rental of those units as well, and making sure that they maintain that very low affordability.
So I understand that there's a template that we work from.
We start with a template, and then it can expand from there with certain details. For example, Fox Point Farms will be more of a unique one, different from the others because they are more multifamily rather than a single family. So it will be structured a little bit differently, and we're going to be needing to work closely with the developer and our housing department to make sure that everything is spelled out so that we can monitor it appropriately.
Who manages the applicant pool as far as pre-qualifying them, I guess? First, they have to be pre-qualified from an income standpoint, and with this, and with 40 units coming online, you've got the mix now of families to single parents with kids. I would assume there's some method of allocation that would get the right units to the qualified people, and presumably there's probably a backlog or more people than there are units. How is the selection made? And is it the same across the city for each one of these projects we approve?
I can't speak specifically on how that's done, but I do know that we have staff allocated for putting people on waiting lists, and they submit their paperwork to identify whether or not they do qualify. But as far as distributing them, I don't.
And so one of the things I would like to see is I'd like a presentation. So if, personally, I would like to continue this and just come back. I think the project is great. I have no problem with it switching to ownership form. But given what's going on in the news, I think we should be prudent and understand that system and understand what we are entitling. I'm not trying to take anything away from the applicant. I applaud them for going forward with this, but I want to make sure the city has the future, all new projects going forward, we all understand how it works, how they get distributed, and that it's fair and equitable. So,
Bruce, do you have concern that the units that were set aside as rental units would not be the same units that are offered for sale?
no, I've been assured that nothing's changing there, so that's not my concern at all. My concern is strictly about how they get allocated, to whom they get allocated to, and who handles the waiting list, and how are the selections made? Because it's concerning. And here we're switching from what was approved as a rental project to a condominium ownership, which is similar to what's happened. What's happened at Loudoun is it was a for sale unit that got sold to an LLC, and that LLC is now going to be responsible and a party to an amended agreement with the city to rent it out. But what's a concern is there were people that wanted to buy that, and who gets to select the LLC over people who are qualified to buy the house outright? And right now, I don't know the answer, and I'm not sure staff can tell us, but I think it would be prudent to take a couple week, 4-week pause, get that information, see what information, what conditions, if any, we can add legally to these future agreements. Because right now, basically, what we do is we add a condition of approval that says an affordable housing agreement will be executed. Beyond that, it's just a template, and things can get added, removed, changed. I think there needs to be more visibility into that, and possibly a little more control. In the end, will it change? It won't. I don't think it'll limit what the owner can do with the property, but I personally want to make sure that it's a fair and equitable process that the city has in place, and that they're monitoring anything outside the city, anything the owner does, to make sure, or future owners, to make sure that it's always fair and equitable. And I think the example of Loden has shown me that, at least in the news, what I know is that it's not so fair.
In clarification for Loden, which I'm not familiar with.
It was the Desert Rose, it's a density bonus project out in Olevenhain.
The LLC that purchased the home is still obligated to rent that home at an affordable rate.
Yes, it is.
So
But the question is, what are the rights of the city to direct that ownership to an LLC versus directing it to individual families? And I don't know the answer, and I don't think staff knows the answer, so I'm just asking for a pause long enough to do this.
I was going to say, can we open up public comment? I think I'd like to
Yeah.
hear from the
No, that's a
applicant
good
on
point.
this.
Wait, do we have any, we have the applicant here, okay. So we'll open up public comment, and Brian, if you want to come up and speak?
Thank you, Chair, Commissioners. I have a presentation as well, and I know staff does, but I just want to directly address the question that's at hand here. Obviously, we've been following what happened at Loden, and this is a very different situation. Our partner is Chelsea, who runs the Iris Apartments. They have 5,000 affordable units throughout the county of San Diego. It's very different than having an LLC purchase a property and then rent that out. I think I'd say they run this process more fair and equitably than anybody. They're the foremost affordable housing rental company in the county of San Diego. So I just want to be very transparent with you guys about that, about what our intentions are. We're not going to sell each of those 40 homes individually to some person who would then rent those out to somebody else. Chelsea has come on as a partner of ours. It's actually not even a sale. It's $1 that they're paying us for those hubs, and then we effectively subsidize those. So anyway, I just wanted to be very clear about that. It's a very, very different process. There's 40 homes instead of one. I don't know that anybody on my team would have the time to find 40 individual buyers who would then go out and rent these units. We'd be better off just selling them all to qualified buyers, as you mentioned. So just want to be clear, it's Chelsea, who I think runs some of the most successful affordable housing rental communities in the city of Encinitas. Thank you.
Okay.
Cool. I know, I always had two issues with this, and I've run into people who are like, they're thinking of building an ADU. They're debating whether to make it affordable or not affordable. And there's a fear that comes in. It's like, oh my God, I'm going to make it affordable, and now the city is going to assign me a tenant that I can't live with. So my understanding is if I build an ADU and I deed restrict it to be affordable, I still get to choose who's coming in there. It could be my nephew, it could be someone I know. And correct me if I'm wrong, is that correct, Anna?
They just have to prove their qualifications, yes.
So that's one, I just want to get that out there, because I know several people have asked me that question, and I had to research it myself, because I had the same thought. I was like, oh, geez, I don't know who they're going to send. I do know that I have a couple of friends who are on the list waiting for Section 8 housing, and it's just like this place they are. They've been there for years. They don't expect much of it. I don't know if there's a central clearinghouse for people like this. I think the city tries to be that. I don't think it's perhaps effective, especially if we have a company over here running a business like that. We have others. Do you have to apply to several places to try and get Section 8 housing?
Yeah. And this is not Section 8 housing, correct?
No, not Section 8, but
Okay.
it's affordable housing, and somehow or another people want that, they qualify for it, and they don't know how to get it. They don't know where to apply,
Yeah.
or,
Right.
I don't see that as the issue. I actually am okay with this. I do think the case you referred to was like a unit that sold to a LLC. It was created for the purpose of owning it, and it just, that one kind of didn't smell right to some people. I think this is a completely different.
Could I interject just for a moment? That case is under litigation,
Oh,
so
okay.
I would advise you not to have any public discussion about a case that's under litigation.
Thank you, Barry. That was a total hearsay on my part, just from reading the newspapers. I apologize. But I have no more questions on this one. I feel the right thing's going to be done.
Okay. Anybody else?
Well, I would say it's mandated by state law, and that our city can implement state law with additional restrictions if we would choose to. So we would need to define the state requirements, and then if we want to educate, if we want to change, modify, we could, as long as we would agree to do that. But it's going to be governed by the state.
Yeah, and I think my question is, what is governed, what's not? What part of the process is state mandated and what's not? I'm just not sure.
My understanding of state law is that the units have to be occupied by someone who meets the affordable criteria.
Yep. Anybody else?
My comments parallel Kevin's in that it's my understanding the owner or developer can select who rents from their supply of affordable housing, as long as that renter meets the income requirements set forth in the state law. I'm familiar with Chelsea. I think they do an outstanding job of providing affordable housing. It makes perfect sense to me that a homeowner doesn't want to necessarily become a landlord, and outsourcing that to an expert in that field makes perfect sense to me. I don't have the same concerns, I think, Bruce, that you've expressed. I'm very comfortable with the arrangement. I think there's nothing in here that's allowing them to skirt the state law. And I don't think whether it's an ownership or a rental, which is the issue, from this resolution is modifying any previous agreement about the number of units, where they are, what size they are, any of that all stays in place. And so I would support the project tonight.
Okay. I don't know. Chris, you have any comments?
I do, just briefly. I would also support it tonight. I don't know that this commission should put itself in a position where we're determining what the right ratio of different types of renters would need to be. And I think that Chelsea would be in a position to rent it to choose the renters who are qualified, using their criteria and state law. And I think that would be the more prudent thing to do, is to let them, who are the experts in that, handle it.
And I'm not proposing that we take over that at all, but until tonight, I had no idea it was Chelsea. In fact, until tonight, we didn't know it, it was who the owner was. It came out in the memo. And so the question I have is, do we understand, what is the connection between our conditions of approval and how the low-income units are administered by the city? And there are some, right? We certainly dictate which units, the size, the shape, et cetera, the physical. And this is the first project that's come before us, and it's certainly a sizable one with quite a few affordable units. That's why the concern. It's the first one, and I hear a lot of conjecture, I guess, and even I am guilty of that because I'm just not sure what the back end process is, and I'd like to understand it. So maybe it's an item that we could agendize as an informational training for the Planning Commission, so that not only the Planning Commission but the public could get educated on what is the process.
I totally
I would support that. What I'm hesitant is to penalize an applicant whose project we like and who I think is doing
Yeah.
a good job I don't want them to have to come back in 3 weeks or 4 weeks or whenever, to answer that. I would love to have a presentation and address those issues independent of this agenda item.
So as far as Chelsea being the selected operator, I guess it will, owner-operator, does that show up in a future affordable housing agreement, or how does that get codified?
That's exactly where it would be, is
Okay.
the affordable housing agreement.
And what right of approval does city staff have on, let's say it's not Chelsea, and I agree, Chelsea is awesome, Iris is awesome, always has been, and so they're a great choice, but let's say it's not Chelsea, it's Slumlord 1 or something. How does the city have any discretion in future approvals for owners?
Not to my knowledge. I'm not sure if Barry has anything to add.
The thing I would add is that if in fact there is a change, that change has to be, that entity, whoever it is, has to enter into an affordable housing agreement that will set forth all of the criteria, the standards, and the performance metrics, if you will. So in terms of the city's evaluation, I would say that we would be evaluating the outcome, not necessarily the entity. So if there was information that would suggest that entity was not capable of performing, we would have a say in that. But in terms of whether it's Chelsea or Wakeland or a number of different entities out there, we wouldn't, that's their choice. But we would have an agreement with that entity, and we would make sure that that entity lives up to the agreements and the conditions that are in the agreement.
And in this case before us tonight, if it ultimately goes to Chelsea, Chelsea would become the owner and would have the agreement with the city, correct? The affordable housing agreement would be not between Nolan, Chelsea, and the city. Would it be between Chelsea and the city only, if they're the owners?
I would ask the applicant to maybe address that, since they're in the negotiations of the structure of the agreement.
Okay.
I have a question. Is the idea that after all of these people apply for the units, right? And we assume that you've very carefully scrutinized the criteria, and they all meet the criteria, okay? They are all in that affordable income criteria. Why can't we simply do a lottery system at that point? Let's say you have 40 units, right? But we have 200 applicants, 250 applicants, 500 applicants. It doesn't matter how many. If you do a lottery system and you draw 40 names, would that satisfy you?
I don't think we got into that part of the discussion. I think you're a step further than where I was. I was just trying to understand, from what I'm understanding right now, the owner actually gets to choose who to sell to, and the sellable units, and then the future owners get to choose who they sell to. And there is no grounds for a lottery in that kind of system.
But in some jurisdictions, they do use a lottery system to make everything fair, because to even the playing field, let's say, because I have the ability to apply early, that I'm number 1 on the list, right?
Yeah.
I got in there first.
Yeah.
But maybe somebody really needs housing, but they're number 50 on the list because they didn't learn about the project until later. I don't know why they're later, but they're later. So to even the playing field, some jurisdictions might use a lottery system, is all I'm saying.
Chelsea may use a lottery system as well, but the city doesn't own these units. So it's Chelsea's responsibility to use their interest list and their criteria for determining who's available or who gets one of these units.
Can I jump in for a sec? Because I
Okay.
heard two
Yeah,
things.
We do have Brian up here.
Oh.
So.
Yep.
Before we get too far
Okay.
afield from the question at hand, I think the question was, you're negotiating the deal right now with Chelsea. Would Nolan still be a party to the affordable housing agreement, or are you selling it in its entirety, the units, the 40 units in their entirety to Chelsea? Thank you.
Brian Grover, Nolan Communities. So Chelsea would.
Is it on?
No.
That's good.
There we go. Brian Grover, Nolan Communities. Chelsea would be the party to that affordable housing agreement.
Okay.
And to answer Commissioner Sherrod's question, on our website right now, we actually have an interest list, and we have thousands of people interested in all types of homes, the affordable housing, the deed restricted affordable housing, the cottage homes, the townhomes, the flats, et cetera. We are taking that list of people who sign up for the affordable housing units and giving that to Chelsea. So that's what they're going to be basing it off of, in addition to other applicants that they might get. And I'd say most of these folks are Encinitas residents who are trying to stay here in Encinitas. So, yeah, I'm happy to answer any other questions, but.
Are there any criteria in the affordable housing agreement that you anticipate that are such as they should be former Encinitas residents, that type? Any prioritization that Nolan would be crafting into this agreement from your side?
So we need to be careful about too much prioritization, but to the extent that we are allowed to prioritize, we're going to do so in a positive manner. So for example, some of the employees that we're displacing on the property, we have them on our list for affordable housing, folks who run nonprofits in the city, folks who work in the city but don't live in the city. We have our own criteria, and we're working to figure out where we are allowed to, I would call it, positively discriminate. And again, that will be the prioritization list that goes to Chelsea, and they'll have no reason not to use that list. To them, it's 40 renters, right? So to the extent that everybody is qualified, they don't have a priority. We do, because of the community that we're trying to create here.
And so ultimately, let's see, you will take ownership of the project first, and so ultimately the first rendition, I think, or please confirm, will the first rendition of the affordable housing agreement be between Nolan and the city, or is there a way that you'll be able to transfer ownership so that Chelsea becomes the actual party that negotiates the first?
It'll be between our builder, which is Shea Homes,
Okay,
and the city, and that'll get transferred over to Chelsea.
okay, cool.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you for the
Yeah,
explanation. That helps.
definitely. Happy to answer any other questions.
Yeah, so Bruce, you said an informational item is in order here, and I couldn't agree more. It seems like a very potentially hot topic for us. I think an informational thing just to find out how the heck this works, and from that, perhaps come up with some sort of action that will require some staff time.
And
Actually,
possibly city council too.
Possibly, yeah. So we may start something bigger than we think. I agree with Steve wholeheartedly. I don't think it's proper to have a single applicant take the burden of this. Feels like we've opened up a can of worms, and we should, stir it around, see what we see.
So
And
I'll entertain a
but
motion.
I would make a motion that we approve this case as is. I would like to, as part of this motion also, I'd like to ask that we agendize an informational item on the criteria for choosing affordable tenants, especially in large complexes or larger complexes.
I will second.
And I would add the correction memo.
Yes, and the correction memo, of course, incorporated into this motion.
And just a point of order, when we're agendizing an item like that, is it best to do it within another motion, or should we put it at the agenda item additions at the end of the meeting?
Good question.
I think it would be more appropriate to do it at the end of the meeting so that we keep these two items separate.
Okay. It feels somewhat also proper to link the two, but I'll amend my motion. I'll remove the informational item request. We'll address that at the end of the meeting, and so I move for approval.
And Susan, you second the changes to the motion?
And
Okay, so we got a motion and a second?
Actually, Commissioner Dalton seconded, I believe, through his.
I'm sorry.
I hit my button, but
Oh, I heard the words.
He's
I
too
didn't see it.
quick.
Yeah.
I haven't even done the motion yet,
At
so.
least on Zoom, I could see one place to look. Now I have to keep an eye on the screen while watching you guys on the other side, too. So I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, let's call the question.
So the vote passes unanimously.
Okay, so now we'll move on to our
6C, Portofino.
6C, Portofino, yep. And do we need, I think
No,
you-
I just have a question. I'm not sure who even best to ask. I'm looking at the staff report. I know, I sense, I'm thinking back to the Surfers Point case, I think, where we'd actually concluded that the design review had expired, and council further said that the major use permit had expired. This one, it's unusual. If I read down here where it says, after the city council denied the appeal, let me see. So in the analysis section, we say a conditional use permit cannot be revoked without sufficient cause, and further, prior to revocation, notice and hearing must be provided for. It says here, though, let me see, rather than the revocation of the permit, attempt to revoke the permit was nullified, and it refers to the Community Development Commission, I guess, versus the city of Fort Bragg. Was an attempt made to revoke these permits and then it was nullified, or was that, are we referring to some sort of case law?
That's just referring to case law, so it's not specific to this.
Now,
It's referencing why a hearing is required, excuse me,
that's
to
okay.
revoke it.
Okay, because I remember there was a lot of debate the last time we did something like this concerning whether or not a permit expires, whether the application expires. I think my understanding was that the application, for the application to expire, needs a hearing. For the permits to expire, just requires 2 years and no renewal.
So
Is that correct?
it's only the use permit that is the one that requires the hearing. All others, you're correct, they expire upon the expiration dates.
Excellent, thank you. That was the clarification I needed on this case. If nobody else has anything else to add, I would move we approve 6C as staff recommendation.
Was that a second? I saw Steve do.
I'll
Okay.
second.
So any discussion? No further discussion? Call the question.
Susan, I'm not sure why it's not showing up on yours, but I can put the vote in here, so you can just let me know if it's your yay or nay. Yeah, okay. Great. So the vote, again, passes unanimously on this item.
Okay, so now we move on to the regular agenda. Members of the public wishing to speak on items listed on the agenda should submit a pink speaker slip to the commission clerk. On tonight's regular agenda, we have one item, item 8A, Liebenheim Municipal Water District Recycled Water Project, case number multi 003512-2019. And this is a public hearing to consider a major use permit and coastal development permit for a new recycled water pipeline and associated improvements located underground within the public right-of-way on Manchester Avenue and El Camino Real. The project is located in the public right-of-way on Manchester and El Camino Real between Via Poco to Tennis Club Drive in Cardiff by the Sea and New Encinitas. So are there any disclosures? No disclosures, and we begin with a staff report presented by Senior Planner Andrew Maynard.
Thank you very much, Chair, Commission, and public. As you mentioned, this is the Manchester Recycled Water Project. The applicant is the Liebenhain Municipal Water District, and we have Karen Ogawa, the project manager. As you indicated, there's 2 discretionary permits. So one, the major use permit, second, the coastal development permit, and ultimately the CEQA determination. As we look at the site conditions, as you indicated, it's all within the paved right-of-way. On the lower portion, it's just east of the I-5 interchange at Via Poco, extends up Manchester to El Camino Real, and ends just past Tennis Club Drive. The overall zoning, as it crosses over into the paved right-of-way, is ERS PK on the lower portion, R3, and RR1 within the actual roadway. And then the surrounding conditions are very similar, a few distinctions, the RR zone, the R30, and PSP. The main kind of surrounding conditions are residential uses, the lagoon on the south side, and Miracosta College. The applicant did several public outreach as part of the project. One was a workshop held on January 7th, 2020. The applicant, as part of their process, they actually expanded from a 500-foot radius, which is their standard process, to 1,000 feet. They got a few questions. The main kind of questions were, how will access to existing HOAs around the area, and also just general access questions during construction, and they responded to those, and no additional emails were received. During the public notice, which was mailed on October 7th, 2021, staff received one inquiry, and that was just general questions about the project duration, timing, and access during construction again. We also received one email today, and that was distributed to the commission, and general questions about recycled water in Encinitas and billing. The overall scope includes the construction of approximately 7,400 feet of 6-inch PVC pipeline that'd be trenched within the right-of-way, as I indicated. So it'd be approximately 24 to 32 inches wide and approximately 4 to 6 feet deep. With the overall scope, there would be construction staging either within the right-of-way or outside the coastal zone on private property. And then there'd be traffic control during all times during construction. The use permit is limited just to the Manchester section of the project. Again, it is just the underground construction of the recycled water pipeline, just within the existing paved right-of-way. There'd be no stage or improvements on the lagoon side of the project. Hours operation would be standard, kind of 7 a.m. to 5 a.m., and it could be refined with staff. There's no proposed night hours. The coastal development permit includes the overall entire project, so that'd be the Manchester and El Camino section of the new pipeline, and then the temporary construction staging, and then just overall documentation with our city's LCP. The CEQA determination, the OMWD is the lead agency. They prepared a mitigated negative declaration that was reviewed by city during the process as the responsible agency. That was adopted by the OMWD board on March 18th, 2020, and they filed a notice of determination. All the mitigation measures are included with the overall draft resolution. Overall, the project complies with all the municipal code and general plan guidelines, and staff's recommending approval of the project, subject to the conditions and findings in the staff report. And I'm happy to answer any questions you have. Thank you.
Are there any questions of clarification? No? Okay. I will open the public hearing. Do we have speakers?
We do not.
No speakers. Okay. I have one question. Anybody else have any questions?
Not particularly. It's
Yeah.
pretty clear cut.
Yeah. The only question I have, Andrew, would be the work yard. It says on Manchester on a private property outside of the coastal zone. To me, that means east of El Camino Real, and the Keene property comes to mind. Is that one of the possible locations for a work yard?
They haven't identified the areas outside the coastal zone. The applicant could probably clarify that if needed.
And so my one concern would be truck traffic on the two-lane portion of Manchester through Liebenhain, the windy portion. I don't know if the commission would be interested in a condition to limit traffic on that, because you can get to any place I'm thinking of, a likely candidate via Encinitas Boulevard, which is 4-lane. And I'm just worried about safety concerns.
So you're saying limit the traffic to not go on Manchester?
Yeah, on the two-lane portion of
On the two-lane portion,
Manchester,
when
that it would, if it turns out to be like the Keene property where the Liebenheim Water District has been using it as a yard for other improvements, and so it certainly seems like a likely candidate. I'm not saying they shouldn't use it, it's a great location to use if that turns out to be the one. But I just want to make sure we aren't putting major truck traffic on that two-lane portion of Manchester between Encinitas Boulevard and El Camino Real.
So Bruce, you know the area better than I. The area you're referring to, I mean, how would they get there?
They would go up
Could
El
you get there
Camino,
from-
turn right on Encinitas Boulevard, go to the end of Encinitas Boulevard, and they turn on Rancho Santa Fe.
Okay.
Can
Yeah.
someone show us on a map?
Yeah, I used Google Maps to say, take me from Tennis Club Road to Via Poco, and it gave me this beautiful map.
And this would be similar to many other projects that get conditioned with traffic, construction traffic plans, or when there's a lot of earth moving.
Yeah, I would totally support that.
And can I ask another question while they're working on the map? So I had a question about how this construction would coincide with the construction that's going on the I-5 and the interchanges at Manchester right now. Would this be after that project is completed?
So it would have to, the applicant could probably speak to the actual timing of the project. There still are additional permits that would have to be obtained by the city. They'd have to go up to bid for contractors, all that. So that would definitely be coordinated, as well as like any staging within the right-of-way. They would have to seek encroachment permits to see if space is available as well.
And I was thinking this was a city project, but is there an applicant,
Yeah.
the applicant?
So we do have Karen Ogawa sitting in the
Karen,
audience right there.
did you want to address I'm sorry, I should have given you time at the beginning of the public comments. Yeah, absolutely. Just introduce yourself, and I don't know if you have a presentation you wanted to give or anything. I think we've all read it, so we're pretty familiar with the project.
Can you hear me?
There's a button that should have, it should go green when it's live. Is it a lit button like ours?
It's on.
Okay.
Okay.
Yep, we hear you.
Good evening, Mr. Chair and Planning Commission. My name is Karen Ogawa. I'm with the Liebenheim Water District, and we are the proponent of the Manchester Recycled Water Project. So I heard a request to condition the project. We have not put this project out to bid, so our specs are not complete yet, so we can certainly add that to our specs.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sorry, what was the other question?
The timing, what is the
Oh, okay.
timing of the project relative to the improvements at Manchester and I-5?
Okay, so the improvements at Manchester and I-5 are going to continue for quite some time still, unfortunately. What Caltrans has done, one reason this project's been delayed a little bit, we've been coordinating with Caltrans to build the extension for the recycled water from San Alejo through their intersection out of their right-of-way. So we're going to end up on the other side of Via Poco. That's where our contractor will pick it up and take it from there.
Okay. So it could be concurrent with the current construction, and it looks like from the conditions, it'll have to avoid certain breeding times within the lagoon.
That's correct. We'll have monitoring if required, and if we're going during nesting season, we probably will. We're looking at possibly starting construction in March. That's not to say we can't start construction on the other side of the pipeline. And that's certainly something that we will be coordinating with Caltrans to try and mesh up with their schedule at that time.
Okay. So any more discussion or questions for the applicant?
No.
No? Thank you.
Uh-huh.
Thank you.
I would support a condition not to use Manchester.
Okay, yeah, and so I'll make a motion, if nobody else is going to talk. I'll make a motion to approve the project with the addition of limiting traffic on the two-lane portion of Manchester from El Camino to Encinitas Boulevard, should the yard be located somewhere in Liebenheim.
Can I make a polite amendment there?
Sure.
Let's use the term shall not use Manchester Avenue, since
Okay.
we're into shalls and as opposed to mays.
That is a friendly amendment. I agree. Can I get a second?
I'll second. I'm still looking at the presentation.
Me too.
Right, looks like,
Dalton.
Kevin, I think
Yeah.
you're too slow.
He is fast on the button. That's all I can say.
Oh,
Yeah.
look.
And so, no further discussion, call the question?
Susan is,
Yeah, aye.
Aye.
okay, thank you. All right, so the vote passes unanimously.
Perfect. Thank you. So now, future agenda items to be added by the Planning Commission. I would recommend what do you want to call it? An informational item on the affordable housing agreement and how the units, the lower income units that we entitle are distributed, allocated, and managed. In particular, the for sale ones.
I'd also like to know if there is any, if we have any control over how the rental units are allocated. And I think the intent of this informational item would be for us, but also very much so for the public, because there's a lot of misinformation out there about just how this whole thing works. People who want apartments don't really know how it works. People who have apartments don't know how it works. And it's sand in the gears, basically.
Just to clarify, you keep referencing allocation. I think what you're really talking about is outreach and selection of tenants and/or owners. Because when you say allocation, I keep thinking of the units and allocating them
Oh,
throughout the project.
Yeah,
as opposed
yeah,
to-
I mean it in how they get assigned owners or
Okay.
how the owners get the opportunity.
Yes.
What's the qualification, just the process flow.
Right.
And I think what I'm looking for out of this information is a secondary question would be, what's within the purview of the Planning Commission to condition the project in order to guarantee that it's fair in the future, fair and equitable too? Can we help?
And I mean, it would make sense to include, like, here's Fox Point is a perfect example. It's one of them. We know it because we're here. I'm sure there's a couple others perhaps that aren't under litigation that could be referenced, so we could have some idea of how things have worked in the past, and from that, maybe we'll end up at the end of that meeting deciding that something should change.
And I'm absolutely not asking about any current litigation. I just want to know what the process is,
Yeah.
because it's one of those areas that I couldn't answer questions. People ask me stuff and I go, I don't know.
I know.
And I want to know. But it's not usually part of our entitlement, but I view it as the next step past the entitlement. And so there are probably conditions we could be applying that could help make it smoother, fairer, more visible to the public.
I mean, it could be that the outcome is we come up with a couple of boilerplate conditions that we tend to put in projects like this.
Yeah,
That would be my hope, the easiest way, rather than make a new ordinance,
yeah.
which is,
Well, we could learn that it has to all be done at city council level,
yeah.
right?
But-
So I'm,
As you pointed out, we don't know.
I think we're getting cart before the horse. I would support the informational thing, and then I think based on that, we could make decisions about whether conditions are appropriate or not.
yeah. And my only reason for adding the addition was just to get an idea. I wasn't planning on making any decisions there other than, this is informational. Okay.
I would, maybe what could be included is an idea of how many applicants there currently, how many people have currently applied for this type of housing in our area as well. I don't know if that's information that we can easily get from another source, but this might be a good time for us to learn that information too.
Yeah.
I mean, it could be that the results of this will be bringing in our PR department and having them actually do proper community outreach, make some of those lovely flyers they do that explain this process to people. And,
So just so we don't send too much request staff's way.
and I'd like a burrito.
Yeah, I'm going to reiterate that I think with Steve's agreement, that I'm looking for just an informational item at this point, so.
Yeah,
what-
I'm
what-
jumping
what
ahead
we-
again.
Okay, what we agendize beyond that, we'll see.
An
We-
informational
We don't
item
even
is-
know what we don't know. So, okay, cool. Any other items that any planning commissioners would like to agendize? Planning commission reports, any planning commission reports? No? City planner reports?
Yes, I do. A few things. One, there was a public workshop on October 16th for the city council redistricting. Approximately 25 people attended, and our demographer was stating that there are a lot of people going online to provide their input, and that they encourage people to continue to do that. There is a city's webpage for any future meetings, hearings that are coming up. There's a timeline that's outlined on the webpage. If anybody wanted to go and look at that, they're welcome to. Any questions on that one?
Nope.
Okay. The next was yesterday evening at City Council. They heard the Papian appeal, which was 1222 Hermes Avenue. It was the 5-unit complex that had the nonconformity density and structural nonconformities, which Planning Commission denied. City Council did overturn the denial. They did it on the basis of that the rebuild of one of the 5 units does not significantly increase the economic life of the nonconformity. And then they felt that the construction of a 2-story home does not change the character. There were other 2-story homes in the vicinity that was mentioned for that. So that project did get approved and is moving forward.
Okay.
Then the next item is the ATP implementation map workshop. MAP, Model Alternatives Project, it stands for. A lot of people ask that question. So that workshop is November 3rd at 6 p.m. at the community center. And then the last item I have is the El Camino Real specific plan public workshop is on November 15th at 6 p.m. also at the community center.
Okay,
And that's all I have.
wow, a lot. And with that, thank you, everybody, and,
Before we close off, I have several family emergencies going on, and November 4th, our next meeting, I will be absent.
okay,
So, don't know if anyone else is going to be absent, but it sometimes affects what we agendize.
okay. Any other announcements? If not, our next regularly scheduled meeting is November 4th, and so we are now adjourned to the regular Planning Commission meeting of November 4th, 2021 at 6 p.m. Thank you.
Whenever we finish early like this, I always think of Brett Farrow.
Efforts to be a more